Let's talk about this for a second. There's no doubt after reading the entire agreement, this is a bad, bad, bad deal for Israel. The psychology behind it is that there's no good deal for Israel. Israel loses in every single scenario given here. And to be honest with you, it kind of feels like Donald Trump did a 180 on us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Today, we're talking about probably the biggest topic in the news, the ceasefire deal. For the last week, we have been here in Israel. We have been absolutely tossed back and forth with the different parameters of this hostage deal, this transfer of prisoners, ones that were taken by Hamas on October 7th, violently and brutally, and exchanging thousands of evil terrorists who have committed terrible crimes in exchange for each other to potentially begin the end of the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. I have been talking to sources. I've waited to have a proper video on this. I watched Preston Stewart's video last night. I thought it was a great assessment. I want to add a little bit more from my side on the dynamic, especially the feeling in Israel. This video is going to be a little bit more conjecture, a little bit more sources on the ground. I've got some articles to show you guys, but nothing crazy, because if I had to encapsulate this situation, it's been a lot of a feeling, right? A lot of us have been feeling some type of way this week about this whole situation. It has been a very, 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 very strange experience, and I'll get deeper into that here in Israel. So let's just begin with where we are now. This is from one of my most trusted sources online. I'm going to be reading from my phone because I got all these through text. Okay, yesterday, Hamas had stalled negotiations, and PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad had stalled the negotiations with new demands. The second that they were caught stalling the negotiations, they immediately flipped the script onto Israel and started blaming Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich in their cabinets that they were actually stalling it. But it is clear that they had new demands. The demands aren't clear what they were, but it was clearly reported from America as well, and Trump's end. Donald Trump was even saying, if Hamas backs out of this deal, which it looked like they were about to, there was going to be renewed consequences for them. So yesterday, Hamas had brought on new demands for the ceasefire deal that did not sit right with Israel, and that began a whole argument in Israel's cabinet. The IDF all during that same exact time was striking Gaza, was hitting Gaza hard. Lots of reports of unalived people, lots of reports of terrorists that were unalived as well. There was even some head of a Hamas brigade yesterday, I don't even want to comment on his name, that actively took part in the October 7th. Got to be careful with the wording here on YouTube, but the horrific events on October 7th, and he was unalived as well yesterday. The deal was expected to be finalized last night and approved by the cabinet on Friday, and on Saturday evening by the government. There was a bit of a delay in the days now, and originally the hostage release was supposed to take place on Sunday. Everything's supposed to be one day later. There was an argument between Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and Bibi Netanyahu. These are all cabinet leaders in the Israeli government, and obviously Bibi Netanyahu being the prime minister. The main disagreement culminating down with Smotrich and Bibi Netanyahu. It is unclear at the moment exactly what they were arguing about. I don't think a lot of that news has been disseminated to the people yet. Ben-Gvir, he took the major stance, even went on a video saying that he would be resigning and his party would be resigning from the coalition government if this deal goes through. And then the one term that if this deal goes through and there was still a promise to continue the fighting at a later date, that they would be interested in rejoining the government. But if this was a one and all to end the war, this was the beginning of the end of the war, and specifically the exiting of the Philadelphia corridor, he would be leaving the Israeli government. We are going to later in this video read the terms of this agreement. I do find personally some of them to be very, very off-putting, but we will be reading it, and we'll talk a little bit about how this happened. All in all, if it goes smooth, the first release might happen on Monday. As of last night, the big news was that the deal was officially signed by the Israeli side. Okay, I was told from my high source to not make this video because things are changing so quickly. But I told them on YouTube it's important because people want updates. People have been messaging me for updates. I thought it was important to add my commentary on the deal as well. But everything you see right now, there is a chance that things can change. Things can always change. It is a very, very dynamic environment right now. So yeah, like my source said, there is still a very decent chance that the deal will collapse. As for the Likud party, contrary to Ben Gvir's statements, the existing deal allows Israel to return to fighting under an American guarantee. Receive the weapons and means of warfare it needs, maximize the number of live hostages released, and maintain full control of the Philadelphia axis and the security buffer that surrounds the Gaza Strip, and achieve dramatic security achievements that will ensure Israel's security for generations. This is what the Likud party said. I am not sure that this is the truth because the agreement that I had read had said something differently. So let's kind of get into that. So on screen right now, I actually have the deal details. I want to read them with you guys right now. We're going to go through the whole thing. I know it's a little tedious, a little long, but it's important for you guys to understand what exactly is going on here. Particularly the Philadelphia corridor, which for me, as somebody who's been living here for the last year, it's kind of a non-negotiable, and I think for a lot of Israeli people it is. But there's again this dilemma of the hostages and wanting to bring them home so badly. So let's read through this, okay? And I'll give you a little bit more details from the CNN article that's updating live. Okay, this is the practical procedures and mechanisms to implement the agreement for exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners and the return to a sustainable calm. I want you guys to keep in mind one thing before I read this. When we talk about Israeli hostages, innocent people who were abducted violently on October 7th, Palestinian prisoners, a vast majority, not everybody, but a vast majority of them are actual terrorists who committed terrible crimes against humanity, against innocent civilians. They are not equatable. These are prisoners because they are violent prisoners. R-wording, stabbings, bombings, the worst things you can imagine, shooting people, throwing rocks at people, trying to kill them. These people are not equivalent, okay? So just understanding the context of modern Gaza, when we talk about coming back to a sustainable calm, to a future of peace, the Palestinian people are actively fighting and celebrating for the release of violent offenders back into their society. So all the criticism that I've given Palestinians has been extremely valid because it's not like you are going to make peace with a rational society after. It is not just Hamas. People in the streets of Gaza are celebrating. People in the streets of the West Bank are celebrating the release of violent offenders, R-worders, terrorists back into their society. Okay, just please keep that in mind before we keep going. Keep that in the back of your head this entire time. Just in case you forgot, these are not just prisoners. They're terrorists. Stage 2 preparations. The parties and the mediators' objective is to achieve a final consensus to implement the May 27, 2024 agreement, which if you guys don't know, there was an agreement that was close in May, on the exchange of hostages and prisoners and return to a sustainable calm, which would achieve a permanent ceasefire between the parties. All procedures in the first stages will continue to stage 2. So long as the negotiations of the conditions of implementing Stage 2 are ongoing and the guarantees of this agreement shall work to ensure the negotiations continue until an agreement is reached. So basically, the whole situation is predicated on that this first phase of the 33 hostages that are released, some of which we know now are dead, is all done in good faith, which you can't really do with a terrorist group. And then eventually the talks continue. This whole agreement is predicated on the fact that we actually continue the agreement in the future. Israeli forces withdrawal. Withdrawal of Israeli forces eastwards from the densely populated areas along the borders of the Gaza Strip, including Wadi Gaza, Netzarim, and Kuwait roundabout. The Israeli forces will be deployed in a perimeter of 700 meters with an exception of 5 localized points to be increased no more than 400 additional meters that the Israeli side will determine, south and west of the border, and based on the maps agreed upon by both sides which accompany the agreement. All right, here's where the fine details are. The prisoner exchange. The 9 ill and wounded from the list of 33 will be released in an exchange of a release of 110 Palestinian prisoners with life sentences. That's that Palestinian peaceful society. So excited for them to have that. Israel will release 1,000 Gazan detainees from 8th of October that were not involved in the 7th of October 2023. Now, there's a discrepancy. People tell me Israel just arrested a bunch of people. You had a mass of 3,000 people that broke into Israel's borders. There were well-defined humanitarian zones and zones like non-combat zones that you were not allowed to be in. Israel could not take a security risk. So there were certain people that were arrested on October 8th and a little bit beyond that may or may not have been involved, but there was no way to tell because they were standing in the active combat zones. Okay? That doesn't change the fact that a good majority of those 1,000 people are probably somewhat affiliated with Hamas because they were told to directly stand there or forced to stand there in affiliation with the terrorist group. And I would go as far as to assume that most of those people probably were happy to do so. Okay? C, the elderly, men over 50 from the list of 33, people like Shlomo Mansour, the oldest hostage. Okay, he's over 80 years old. He's from Iraq, originally a refugee from Iraq, just like the people from my family. Will be released in exchange for an exchange key of 3 life sentences and 27 other sentences, which is also insane. Ebram, they spelled his name wrong here, but it's Avera Mengistu, who is Avera Mengistu and Hasham al-Sayed are the 2 longest standing hostages in Gaza. They've been there for over 10 years, since 2014. They both have some sort of autistic disability, and they've been held by Hamas in Gaza for over 10 years. One is an Ethiopian Jew, and the other is an Arab from the south of Israel. They will be released according to an exchange key of 130, as well as 47 Shalit prisoners. If you guys don't know, the 47 Shalit prisoners is in regards to the Gilad Shalit deal, where there were thousands of violent defenders that were released. There was a couple that didn't, and so that was one of Hamas's demands. A number of Palestinian prisoners will be released abroad or in Gaza based on its list agreed between the both sides. Honestly, terrifying to me that they're going to be released abroad because I think they can do a lot of damage, and that's really, really scary. Number 4, Philadelphia Corridor. In my opinion, the most important stipulation in this entire contract, in this entire agreement. The Israeli side will gradually reduce the forces in the corridor during stage 1 based on the accompanying maps and the agreement between both sides. Already bad. After the last hostage release on stage 1, on day 42, the Israeli forces will begin the withdrawal and complete it no later than day 50. You guys need to understand the Philadelphia Corridor is basically what this entire fight, at least strategy-wise, has been about. The Philadelphia Corridor was a crossing between Egypt and Gaza. It is where all the weaponry, it is where the North Korean weapons, the Russian ammunition, the IEDs, the explosives, the R-wording kits, the hostage-taking kits that I've seen with my own eyes, that I filmed for you guys. I've been to the intelligence bases and I've seen these things with my own eyes. This is where all of them came through. The ISIS-style trucks with the guns on the back, the motorcycles, all of it came through the Philadelphia Corridor. Every single thing. Egypt is 100% to blame as well. But relinquishing the Philadelphia Corridor for me does not make any sense whatsoever. The Rafah border crossing. The Rafah crossing will be ready for the transfer of civilians for the wounded after the release of all women, civilian, and soldiers. Israel will work towards the readiness of the crossing as soon as the agreement is signed. Israeli forces will be redeployed around Rafah crossing according to the attached maps. And the finishing part of this agreement, 50 wounded military individuals will be allowed to cross daily, accompanied by 3 individuals. Each individual crossing will require Israeli and Egyptian approval. It's good. I'm happy that that's said there, that it will require Israeli approval, but it just... Again, these things start seeming like Band-Aid solutions, but let's keep going. The crossing will be operated based on the August 2024 discussions with Egypt. Exit of ill and wounded civilians. All ill and wounded Palestinian civilians will be allowed to cross via Rafah border crossing, according to Section 12 in the May 27, 2024 agreement. 7. Return of unarmed internally displaced Netzarim corridor. The return is agreed based on the 27th May 2024 agreement, Section 3A and 3B. On day 7, the internally displaced pedestrians will be allowed to return north without carrying arms and without inspection via Rashid Street. On day 22, they will be allowed to return north from the Salah ad-Din Street as well without inspection. On day 7, vehicles and any non-pedestrian traffic will be allowed to return north of the Netzarim corridor after vehicle inspection will be performed by a private company, which will be determined by the mediators in sync with the Israeli side based on agreed-upon mechanism. Humanitarian Aid Protocol, number 8. Humanitarian aid procedures under the agreement will be done subject to the Humanitarian Protocol agreed upon the supervision of the mediators. Let's talk about this for a second. There's no doubt after reading the entire agreement this is a bad, bad, bad deal for Israel. The psychology behind it is there's no good deal for Israel. Israel wins Israel loses in every single scenario given here. There isn't a single deal that could be signed that would see the security of Israel moving forward. And to be honest with you, it kind of feels like Donald Trump did a 180 on us. There was a lot of talk about what the Islamic regime of Iran and Hamas would have to capitulate to, but none of what the Israeli side would have to. We all felt that rallying behind Donald Trump would be the right decision to give us the proper security that we need and not somehow reward Palestinians and Palestinian extremism with something that they will take now as a massive victory. The problem is, I think, that the U.S. administration doesn't see is that even giving a small win like this in the way that we're doing it, in my opinion, it's a massive misstep. Because, and again, I want to clarify that I'm not for or against this hostage deal. It's and I've been vocal about this all week. It's been very hard for me to even come to a conclusion of what I want, because the number one thing I want is for the hostages to come back home. It's killing me on the inside. And just knowing that we have an opportunity to bring some of them home, I want it more than anything. But from the same exact perspective, knowing for a fact that these terrible, terrible terrorists are going to be back on the streets again, they most likely will do these things again to the future. Most likely will take hostages again in the future. We're just going back to square one. All we're doing is kicking the can down the road again. It doesn't seem like a smart idea, and what I would have liked to see from the U.S. administration, instead of forcing the hand of Bibi Netanyahu to get into another deal, which it seems like this is what has happened, actually abiding by the fact that all hell will break loose in the Middle East and showing a strong hand to the proxies. But if I have to take an objective look at this, Donald Trump's base does not want war in the Middle East. They want a peaceful solution as soon as possible with little regard to the effect of the life of people in Israel. It's a band-aid solution, and we will see ourselves back here very, very, very soon. There is no doubt about that. If you do the same exact thing and the same exact steps, there's no prospect of peace. The one thing I'm holding on to is that both Donald Trump, Bibi Netanyahu, and other people in the Israeli government have promised that this isn't the end-all, be-all, and that phase one will lead to further talks in phase two in regards to a permanent peace, the permanent understanding of borders, and the reigniting of the Abraham Accords. The issue is, under this current agreement, Hamas stays in power, which has been the one factor that Bibi Netanyahu said he was going to take to the grave with him. Hamas will not be allowed to remain in power, and it looks like we are capitulating to Hamas. The problem is that victory, the way that it sends that victory to the Arab world, to the Muslim world, we are donezo. We lost this war big time. Big time. If they are allowed to continue having power in Gaza, we are done for. Okay? This deal, it breaks us. It really does. It destroys all the military achievements we made, and it destroys any sense of long-term security in Israel forever. Because you've just given them a massive, massive, massive thing to celebrate for. Let's get into the article I wanted to read real quick. So this is from CNN giving updates. G7 leaders hail ceasefire deal and call for safe passage of aid to Gaza. Happy that they don't call for a single thing for the hostages that are there. That's really great from the G7. Really happy that the Red Cross and all these humanitarian organizations have really looked out for our hostages. So hostage families told that the release deal was agreed. This was an hour and 17 minutes ago. Netanyahu's office says families of the Israeli hostages held in Gaza have been told about the deal reached to secure the release of their loved ones. According to a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office Thursday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the coordinator of the hostages and the missing to prepare to receive those freed upon their return to Israel. The statement added, the first phase of the deal reached in Doha between Hamas and Israel announced on Wednesday, including a pause in the war and a release of hostages held in Gaza and Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli custody. Phase 1 is expected to start on Sunday and last for 6 weeks. During the first phase, Hamas and its allied militants will release 33 hostages, including female soldiers, children, the elderly, and the sick. Qatar's prime minister said on Wednesday. Hamas will release 3 female Israeli civilians on Sunday, on the first day of the ceasefire, and another 4 on the 7th. According to a document shared by senior Hamas official, Hamas and its allies still hold 94 people of the 251 people taken from Israel on October 7th, 2023. Of those, at least 34 are dead. According to the Israeli government, though the true number is expected to be higher, more than 150 have already been returned. The elements, the psychology behind this, okay, is just so... I want you guys to look at all the elements of how bad this is. One, there's a reason why Hamas wants to release them in batches, and it's because probably they've been starved and abused, and they're going to take the days that they have to feed them, to try to fatten them up a little bit, which is terrible, to maybe tend to their wounds, to do stuff that they haven't been doing for the last year plus. In addition to that, the Biden, Trump, and Qatar administrations taking credit for this deal is going to be sickening. And at the end of this terrible situation, which Israel really looks like it's going to suffer from, you're going to have these 3 government taking ownership over it. Biden's going to say, hey, I made the deal happen. Trump's going to say, I made the deal happen. Qatar is going to be like, we made the deal happen. And at the end of the day, Israel loses big time. We got shafted hard. So honestly, it's very frustrating to see this whole thing develop. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, in my opinion, is the most important. And I'm sorry, this video is a little long, I know. By the way, if you guys support the channel, buy some merchandise. You can put me on your body. Travelingclad.com goes a long way to support me. This is one of our official shirts. Take a little gander and try to support the channel by joining Patreon, buy me a coffee, whatever you can. It really, really goes a long way to support me. So, look, I want to talk about what's probably the most important thing, which is the media fallout and the feeling of this ceasefire. Okay, Gazans are not surviving a genocide, quote unquote, the way that they framed it in the last year. They are purely touting Israel now and claiming this as a victorious military win. As Gaza lies in ruins, thousands of them are dead. They pretend like this is some sort of big victory under the guise of Hamas, because Palestinians in Gaza are Hamas. Do not try to infantilize the Palestinian people. They are one and the same. One and the same, ladies and gentlemen. They have shown us time and time again that they are extremely supportive of Hamas, and they are one and the same. Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya gave a televised speech in which he said, this is the new Hamas leader. Senior Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya praised October 7th massacre as a major achievement that would be taught to future generations of Palestinians with pride, while touting the ceasefire hostage deal that was announced shortly before he spoke Wednesday as a historic moment. Okay? Just let's get all on the same page of the innocent Palestinian people. Our people have thwarted and declared the hidden goals of the occupation. Today we prove that the occupation will never defeat our people in their resistance. Al-Hayya was quoted as saying during the televised speech from Qatar. As he hides in a pool of millions in Qatar, he touts that they will do October 7th again and again and again. Now, the mainstream media has tried hiding the Palestinian celebrations under the guise of Hamas, because if you look here in the pictures, all the top ones, NBC, the Hindu Times, Zero News, they refuse to actually show you the Hamas flags, but look who is actually showing you the Hamas flags. These green flags right here are the flags of Hamas. Al Jazeera News are showing you the truth for once and for all. The celebrations in Gaza happening right now are Hamas celebrations, and the people who are celebrating are the people. They are not Gazans. They are not innocent Palestinians. They are Hamas, because Gazans and the Palestinians who live there are Hamas. Just understand that. I proved this in the video I made with that random Gazan girl that called me. That was a random person picked off the street, very well may have been. We're fighting against a brainwashed population who is going to attempt to do this again. This is not over, and we will be back here if this ceasefire deal goes through and there are no elements to try to change the status quo after the first phase. I'm hoping and praying that there are. But if there are no attempts to change the current status quo into something more productive for a peaceful future and for a re-education of the Palestinian society, we're going to be right back here in square one in a few years' time. Mark my words. I hope to God and I pray for the security of the hostages and that they come back home. Let them go. They need to be brought back to their houses. They need to be brought back to their families. They need to be out of Gaza. And I pray, I really do pray that this isn't, that this ceasefire deal and the way and how bad it looks for Israel, I hope to God that it changes. And I hope that there's an actual attempt to bring in a lasting peace and not continue the status quo as we've always done. I'm feeling very, very pessimistic about everything, but I'm extremely excited to see the hostages come back home. I really am. I'm probably gonna bawl my eyes out this weekend when it happens. That's all I really have to say. I love you guys a long time. I appreciate you sitting with me at commentary. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat shalom to all my viewers. I love you guys very much. Thanks for believing me and supporting my work. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, Klats. Love you a long time.
If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to monetarily support the channel. Some of the best ways to support me happen to be PayPal, buy me a coffee, or joining our Patreon community. Links to them can be found in the pinned comments or the description of every one of my videos. Joining my Patreon community gives you access to exclusive content and the chance to talk to me on our Discord server. I also go live almost every day here on YouTube. And after my live streams, me and my patrons from Patreon head over to our Discord server to an exclusive after-party hangout. Your support is the only way that I can keep creating the content that you love watching for me. Thank you.